Our relationship with the mobile phone. We look at ours an average of 150 times per day. Over the course of 20 years, they have become more than a companion. They are virtually our new religion. Across the globe, 57 mobile phones are sold every second, which works out at 1.8 billion per year. Today, there are more mobile phones than toothbrushes in the world. Yes, you did hear that right. And the big winners in this revolution are the mobile phone multinationals. It's party time at Apple, Nokia, Samsung, LG, Sony, Huawei, and HTC. But faced with these corporate giants, we asked ourselves a very simple question. Behind the scenes, how are our phones manufactured and under what conditions? We spent 1 year trying to answer this question. We traveled around the world to find out exactly what is at the other end of the line. And frankly, what we discovered made our blood run cold. In China, we went to work in one of the factories that manufacture our phones. Behind these masks, we found dozens of children.
Quand vous voyez les visages de ces enfants, qu'est-ce que ça produit chez vous?
C'est honteux que quelque part, par notre ignorance, on a pu laisser faire ça.
We also traced back to the raw materials that our phones are made from. In Africa, men die to supply our mobile phones with minerals.
Allez, il fait hyper chaud.
Danger. Montez vite. Montez.
Nokia uses microphone. In this mine, 5 people die every month on average. Does it meet your personal values?
So, now, put your phone on silent while we reveal the secrets of how it is made. To find the answers to our questions on how our phones are manufactured, we look to China, whose factories supply the entire world. The majority of phones that are sold across the globe are manufactured here. We were able to access over 20 reports from a company that analyzes all of the phone's components, including parts, software, and materials. And more importantly, the difference between the cost of manufacturing a mobile phone and its sale price in the stores. Take, for example, the Galaxy S4. Not including marketing costs, Samsung achieves a profit margin of €307. And for Apple's iPhone 5S, that margin is even higher, at €340. Our attention is drawn to another line as well, one that hardly ever changes: labour costs. On average, these brands only spend €2.38 on labour costs per phone. In other words, the Chinese workers only earn enough to buy a couple of loaves of bread to make devices that we will spend up to €900 on. Maybe you think you paid a lot for your mobile phone, but it might be that the workers who made it paid a higher price. For several weeks, we have been asking the big mobile phone brands to provide us with their supplier lists. We wanted to meet this low-cost labour force and find out more about their working conditions. Not one brand has come back to us. So we've had to take things into our own hands. We stumbled across a recruitment leaflet for a subcontractor who supplies screens to big smartphone brands. The factory is called LCE, and the working conditions that it promises are idyllic. Air-conditioned apartments with volleyball courts and snooker tables, all provided as part of the package. And above all, a salary of 3,500 yen, which equates to €430, well above the average salary in China. It is located in Nanchang, in central China. The agricultural city of Nanchang, with a population of 5 million, has become the new labour reservoir for the high-tech companies. In the centre of the new technologies district, we find LCE's factory. the happy factory. Despite our numerous requests, those in charge of the factory have refused to see us. And so we've had to put Plan B into action and have got a job at the factory. In one of the city's hotels, we have a meeting with Jiang, who has been hired by LCE. Jiang has already infiltrated nearly a dozen factories that manufacture smartphones. He works for the NGO China Labour Watch, an association known throughout the world for its investigations into working conditions in China. After 2 weeks working in LCE's factory, he has just quit his job. He wishes to remain anonymous.
这是我拍摄的照片和视频。
Such images are extremely rare. It is virtually impossible to film inside the telephone factories in China. As soon as you enter the building, you understand that there is no joking about here. The bosses pin apology notes from employees onto the walls. For example, from this worker who damaged some equipment. What a warm atmosphere. We see our first images from the factory floors and also get our first surprise. In this happy factory, each worker wears a number on their back, an ID number.
C'est courant d'avoir un numéro quand on est ouvrier dans une usine de téléphone portable.
我是第一次进入这家工厂，然后看到他们的衣服后面有编号。我是前天去的。
Jiang worked in the screen quality control department. His job was to make sure that there wasn't a single scratch on the smartphone screens. The supervisors imposed an unsustainable work pace.
大概每天要做个检测的屏幕，大概有6000个。然后基本上是平均是10个小时，也是基本上是3秒钟来检测一个出来。这工资是60元人民币。
At the end of his long working day, Jiang hoped to go back to his large apartment as described in the factory's brochure. But instead, this is what he found: a 20-meter square dormitory that packs in 8 workers all year round. But we find something even more disturbing than hazardous working conditions in this factory. Jiang discovered that it is not only adults behind those ID numbers.
这个是在擦拭手机屏上，这些员工他们都是。
Children making mobile phones, something that is not only completely against international law, but also against the law in China, which prohibits children under the age of 16 from working.
这个是那个四川彝族童工，这些全部都是的。像这个女孩子只有13岁这样。这2个他们都，这个14岁这样的。13岁。然后这个女孩子只有12岁，她跟她妈妈一起，她这小学还没毕业，她就来上班。
Il y a combien de mineurs dans cette usine d'après vous?
一些童工的话，可能这个数字就很将近占到50%这样。
According to Jiang, this means that the LCE factory employs more than 100 children under the age of 16. We're going to check it out.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Je voudrais voir un responsable de l'usine, s'il vous plaît.
That would be this gentleman in the checked shirt. We film discreetly.
Bonjour. Hello. 你好。你好。你们是哪里的？ Martin. Est-ce que vous faites travailler les enfants de moins de 16 ans?
这个关于童工这块，我当然我们厂里面没有，我们是不满16岁的我们不用，所以不存在童工的现象。
Quel contrôle vous mettez en place pour éviter que des enfants entrent dans l'usine?
身份证一定是满16周岁，那个就是差一点都不行。
Est-ce qu'on peut entrer dans l'usine pour vérifier avec vous?
是的，我跟人说的我都告诉你们了，剩下的你们该做什么做什么。我们不要打这些闲，不是在闲聊。好，别的没什么。好吧。
Okay.
Are you convinced? We weren't. But as the manager has forbidden us to stay in front of the factory, we hire a car with tinted windows and park just opposite the entrance. We film with a lens that allows us to zoom in on the workers' faces as they go in and come out of the building. It's a little paparazzi in style, but we don't have any choice. In the early hours of the morning, at the end of the night shift, the workers leave through the factory's main door to go back to the dormitories across the road. After a few minutes, the facts are clear. The factory gates seem more like school gates, with groups of adolescents arm in arm. One of them has even come out with a teddy bear in hand. When you take a closer look, you see the faces of adolescents. And of children even. In their dozens. We go to ask them how old they are, discreetly so as not to alert the factory managers. We come across a group of much older workers who are well aware of the situation. Amongst the children who are coming out of the factory, this young girl, whose name is Jia Jia. She agrees to tell us more about her working conditions because she has decided to leave the factory soon. We meet her in a nearby restaurant.
Vous avez quel âge? Ça fait combien de temps que vous travaillez en face?
就是我1月份来的，才3、4个月。就是因为我叔叔在这里嘛，所以我就跟着来。家里啊，我们彝族那边都每个人都好穷嘛，就是我们本来我是读了初一的，然后就是家里养不起弟弟妹妹还要读书，就这样，所以才来的。那是第1年出来。
Qu'est-ce que vous faites à l'usine?
就是有那个手机屏幕嘛，插那个 TP。
Vous devez en faire combien des écrans?
但是那个玻璃不一样嘛，有的是好干净，有时候就是那个成功品好脏的，有的小时候只插30、40片，不一样。有正常的，有成功品。最多就是13个小时。
Est-ce que vous travaillez de nuit parfois?
就是这样的，你们有些嘛分开，然后一些上夜班，一些上班班，1个月1个月的。就是有时候就是我跟朋友一起去那个。 什么玩什么的之类的，出去我们就一起唱啊什么的。
Jia Jia only earns €160 per month on average for this hard labour. Children working at night for up to 13 hours at a time, with just 2 days off each month. What they're doing in this factory is illegal. And which mobile phones are manufactured under these conditions? You will have heard of them, no doubt, seeing as they're sold all over Europe. This is what we've retrieved from the factory's production line. A smartphone from Huawei, the third largest mobile phone vendor in the world. The screen is typical of the brand's latest range, such as the Y600 or the G510. We check with Jia Jia by showing her this G510 model from Huawei.
是，就差这一种。
We tried everything we could to meet with the people in charge at Huawei. We sent emails and made telephone calls, but it was impossible to get an interview. We tried again and again, but none of Huawei's managers wants to meet us.
Here at Huawei, the question we ask most is not why, but why not?
Well, we just want to know why. Huawei gives us this answer. Concerning our suppliers, they must follow a charter that formally prohibits the employment of children. If there is any breach by the supplier, we will take all necessary actions to stop such breach. Huawei doesn't seem to be particularly interested. In its response, it doesn't even ask us for the name of the factory, something which would be useful for them to be able to take action. But to be fair, Huawei isn't the only brand that works with LCE, the factory with child workers. Whilst we were undercover, we got hold of this order sheet from the company. During the months of March and April 2014 alone, more than 600,000 screens were produced. The majority of them have been manufactured for the big-name brands that are sold in Europe. One of its biggest clients is Tino, with 76,400 screens ordered in just 2 months. As it is a Chinese brand, the name Tino might not mean anything to you. That is because these phones are sold under a much more well-known name, Wiko. Wiko, the low-cost mobile phones. Unheard of a few years ago, this brand has since become one of the largest mobile phone vendors in France, with its headquarters in Marseille. We had to persevere for a long time, but finally, the brand's MD agreed to meet with us.
Wiko, première, à Marseille. On a découvert que cette usine faisait travailler des enfants, et notamment des enfants de 13 ans. On va regarder ensemble les visages de certains de ces enfants. Il y a Jia, par exemple, qu'on a filmé. On la regarde ensemble, elle a 13 ans. Il n'y a pas de doute possible. Quand on voit son visage, on ne peut pas se dire non, elle a 18 ans ou 17 ans. On voit bien que c'est une très, très, très jeune adolescente. Quand vous voyez les visages de ces enfants, qu'est-ce que ça produit chez vous?
J'ai une profonde émotion, ça m'émeut de voir ça. C'est honteux que quelque part, par notre ignorance, on a pu laisser faire ça. C'est dramatique. J'ai appris ça quand j'ai été contacté par vos équipes. Ça m'a profondément affecté. Ça m'a profondément secoué aussi parce que j'ai vu des reportages sur nos principaux concurrents qui effectivement travaillaient aussi avec la Chine et je pensais que peut-être un peu naïvement, que nous, Wiko, nous étions un peu à l'abri de ça. Et à partir du 10 juin, le groupe a décidé de stopper toute relation commerciale avec cette usine-là. Donc à partir du 10 juin, le groupe avait arrêté de travailler avec cette usine LCE.
Comment on a pu en arriver là? Est-ce que les autorités ferment les yeux? Est-ce que ça arrange tout le monde au final?
J'ai du mal à répondre à cette question. C'est peut-être la course effrénée des fois du profit, de l'inconscience, de l'insouciance, de vieilles pratiques locales. Nous avons décidé d'intensifier ces contrôles et je lui ai demandé d'augmenter la fréquence des visites et surtout des visites surprises. Je ne peux pas vous dire que je ne serai pas confronté à ce genre de problème à l'avenir. Ce que je peux vous garantir et ce sur quoi je m'engage, c'est de tout mettre en œuvre pour que ça ne se reproduise plus.
And for our part, we guarantee that we will keep a very close eye on the situation. It has to be recognized that Wiko's bosses have not shrugged off their responsibility, whereas another brand, when faced with their responsibilities, went into hiding. Alcatel OneTouch, the other big manufacturer that is supplied by LCE, the factory with child workers. Alcatel OneTouch, the 5th largest mobile phone vendor in the world. Despite our numerous requests at Alcatel OneTouch, we did not receive a single email, letter or phone call, nothing. It seems that as soon as we show up, everyone goes into hiding. Take a guess at how many phones have been sold across the world since you've been watching this investigation. 123,000. To fulfill such high demand, it's clear that a large number of workers are required, but also a large number of raw materials. Let's take a closer look at a smartphone. Have you already asked yourself, what exactly is in my smartphone? Well, there are more than 300 parts, with the majority made from minerals. Your screen? Made with aluminium from Australia. The welds of your circuit board? Made with zinc from Malaysia. The wires of your chip? made with copper from Chile. Your battery with lithium from Bolivia. Out of all the elements that make up a smartphone, we are most interested in this small component, tantalum capacitors. It stocks energy and resists heat very well. When the battery on your phone dies and it switches off, it's thanks to the tantalum that you don't lose all of the data that you have in it. With 3 capacitors per smartphone, the mobile phone industry is one of the biggest consumers of tantalum. 80% of the world's reserves of this mineral are found in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. After a 6,000-kilometer journey, we arrive in Rubaya, in North Kivu. It's from here that most of the mobile phone brands extract the essential tantalum. However, we have barely even stepped off the plane before we start to understand exactly what it means to live in the world's second poorest country. In Rubaya, there are no roads, no networks, no electricity, no drinking water, and very little food. A river runs through its center, but there isn't even a bridge to get across it. However, the city backs on to a gold mine, or rather a tantalum mine, that sits high up there. To find out more, we must climb this mountain, past the endless procession of those carrying the sacks of minerals. We have government authorization to visit this mine, but on site, those in charge are not having any of it.
Il faut aviser. Avant d'y arriver ici, il faut aviser pour être au public.
After 1 hour of negotiation, we are finally authorized to film here. This is the tantalum mine. Miners squeeze themselves through these holes, with 3,000 people working here day and night. Last year, 360 tons of tantalum raw materials came out of these pits. Here they call the raw tantalum coltan. A 40-kilo sack like this one sells for 600 euros to the brokers when it comes out of the mine, but fetches up to 3,500 euros on the international market. A wealth that should benefit the miners and at least guarantee that they have decent working conditions. But that is not the case.
Comment c'est le travail? How long have you been working here?
3 months.
3 months?
Yeah, it may be enough for me.
Is it dangerous?
It's dangerous.
To find out more about this danger, we need to go down into the depths of the pits. The mine is very narrow. And the further we go down, the less oxygen there is. The temperature is 43 degrees.
Quasiment. Regardez, il fait hyper chaud.
30 meters further down, at the end of the tunnel, we find the coltan diggers. Some rudimentary wooden planks hold up the gallery.
Combien d'heures vous restez par jour?
12 heures par jour.
12 hours per day, with a total daily wage of €5.50.
C'est difficile.
Ça, c'est un beau morceau? Le coltan, il est jaune, c'est ça?
Le coltan. Le jaune, c'était coltan.
And while we are filming, the gallery's ceiling begins to collapse.
Montez vite.
Cas danger.
Montez vite. Montez.
Hier, cas danger, on peut rentrer.
Rock slides are what all the miners are worried about. The mine's managers follow us everywhere, and so it is impossible to get more information on the accidents. It's below in the valley that we will make a discovery. At the local hospital that was built by an NGO, where there are 60 beds and just one operating table. Giulio Carvisperi has been running the emergency room here on a daily basis for the past 2 years with what he has available to him. This 63-year-old Italian is the type of person who restores your faith in humanity. Amongst the patients that day, this Colton miner who is only just recovering from an accident.
La plupart des blessures sont au niveau des membres, c'est-à-dire les fractures des jambes, des pouces ou des membres supérieurs, traumatisme thoracique et traumatisme de la colonne. Parfois des blessures ou une commotion cérébrale.
Injured miners make up the majority of patients in the hospital, with an average of 50 cases per month. And seeing this procession of victims, Dr. Giulio, as he's called here, always asks himself the same question.
Quel est qui vous pousse à entrer là-bas en cherchant les dangers qui est là?
Silikujitoa juu ya ukosefu. Mwenye ile shima litorokaka. Juu tulikuwa kama 5, 4 wakakufa, mimi wakanitosha. Wakati nisikia ile accident akatoroka.
Ça, c'est les gens typiques. Lui, il est sorti, mais 4 sont restés là-bas. Combien de fois se sont passées cette histoire là-bas? Nous, on ne connaît pas. Personne ici va le dire. Officiellement, on n'a rien. Ça sont, comme vous venez de dire, sont les morts fantômes.
The phantom dead. Dr. Giulio certainly sees hundreds of injured miners come through these doors, but he never sees any bodies. Why is that? This evening, in the village, with no one watching, we meet with a miner who has just retired. Norbert Buira. He left the mine because he was scared to be there.
Quand il y a éboulement, on laisse la partie déjà éboulée et on dévie.
Donc les corps, on les laisse à côté.
On laisse les corps à côté et on continue avec la recherche. Donc ceux qui meurent dans les trous là-bas, et c'est tout, et c'est déjà leur tombeau. C'est ça normalement dans la carrière. Vous pouvez entrer à 8h et à 8h05 déjà vous êtes mort. Donc vous êtes candidat de la mort là-bas.
We're talking about dozens of deaths. The tantalum miners pay with their lives so that our smartphones can work. Even if the Democratic Republic of the Congo officially prohibits those under 15 years old from working in the mines, the reality is very different. When the boss of the mine in Rubaya learns that we're in the area, he sends this worrying message to his teams.
Hello, boss.
So that is why every time we approach, the children run away from us. Sometimes it's even a game of cat and mouse. For example, here. Look harder. Can you see him? Just there. One of our contacts on the ground has been able to take this photo from just before we arrived. Here's the Congolese version of mining school. Children that risk their lives, and miners buried alive in a village that is cut off from the world. It is under these conditions that the tantalum we have inside our phones is extracted. But who is it exactly that profits from such a situation? We'll have to follow the trail of the sacks of tantalum, all the way to those who sell it at international level. Most of the mines in Rubaya belong to just one company, MHI. But we wanted to find out which companies buy tantalum from MHI. At least one company confirms it does so, the American firm AVX. In this press release from March 2014, AVX indicates that an MHI mine supplies it with tantalum. Our supply chain includes the MHI mine which supplies us with tantalum. AVX is specialized in capacitors, which, if you recall, are these little tantalum components that prevent our mobile phones from losing data when the battery runs out. In this wonderful internal PowerPoint of AVX, we discover who are its largest purchasers of compositors. We find RIM, the parent company of BlackBerry, as well as Motorola and Nokia. According to our sources, since we filmed there, at least 8 men have been killed in the mines. Nokia had promised to give us an in-depth reply, but instead, we received this email from Nokia's global management. We take these kind of allegations very seriously. While we do not directly source minerals such as tantalum, Microsoft is committed to responsible sourcing practices across our supply chain. We have an official policy on responsible sourcing in our products. We will continue to promote the fair treatment, safety, and well-being of workers and sustainable sourcing in our supply chain. Nokia did not ask us for any specific details, such as the names of the victims or the exact locations of the rock slides in Rubaya. We decide to speak to Bill Gates. Because Nokia now belongs to Microsoft, the multinational founded by the billionaire. The richest man in the world is no longer running the show, but he still has a seat on the board of directors and still owns 330 million shares in the company. The businessman has turned philanthropist. Through his foundation, he aids the poorest nations, in Africa in particular. Therefore, surely he would be concerned about the situation of the miners in Rubaya, who die making Microsoft/Nokia phones. What would he say if we asked him about this during one of his foundation's press conferences at Solidays Festival?
Une question.
We have been investigating this last 9 months on the Nokia supply chain, which now belongs to Microsoft. Some of these minerals come from Democratic Republic of Congo. In this mine, we witnessed child labor. 5 people die every month on average. So here's my question, Mr. Gates. Does what I just described to you meet your personal values or Microsoft values? And also, how come a company like yours cannot prevent this kind of situation?
Okay, I'm sorry, but nous sommes ici pour parler de la fondation et pas de Microsoft.
Okay, I'm sorry. Since serious matters, I'm sorry to insist. If you could answer, that'd be great for French national TV.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not working at Microsoft as an employee anymore, so I'm sorry.
Well, you're still a board member, aren't you?
Ok, je suis désolée, c'est une conférence de presse sur la fondation de M. Gates et sur
Une question? Oui.
Question.
This way, please, this way. Devant vous.
Mr. Gates, I'm sorry to insist, these are serious matters. I know you're committed to the right. Please, just one answer from us.
So are you beginning to understand how these big smartphone multinationals work? Their businesses are so prosperous that they can easily turn their back on difficult questions. During this investigation, another big-name brand has continually turned its back on us, although it flaunts itself across the globe. Samsung, the biggest phone vendor in the world, with 300 million smartphones sold last year. It is also the brand that is the most criticized by the NGOs, because despite numerous controversies, the multinational has not changed its ways. Recently, China Labour Watch published 7 reports denouncing the deplorable working conditions at the subcontracts of Samsung. And every time, Samsung has announced audits, all of which found nothing. For China Labour Watch's director, the reason for this is simple. The subcontractors are given advance warnings of the inspections.
所有的公司都可以去做，但是问题他们不做，他们不愿意去做这个问题。实际上，我相信他们做比我们更专业，可能更好，更有更多的这个不管是人力还有资源方面，都比我们更充分的。他如果说了解到这个结果，他就要付出改善的成本，就是费用，他要投入很多的资源去做改善，这样的话会增加他的费用，会减少他的利润，这个是关键的。所以说他不愿意去了解这个情况的原因是，他们不去做调查的原因是因为他们不想了解情况，然后他们就算了解情况，他们也不做调查，这样的话他们就可以节约他们要支付的成本。
China Labour Watch is not alone in pointing the finger at the smartphone manufacturer. In Samsung world, cases and controversies multiply as rapidly as the mobile phones are produced. In Brazil, 2,000 workers suffer from health problems due to the unsustainable work pace, and it's the state who has filed a complaint.
O pede uma indenização de 250 milhões de reais da Samsung por danos morais coletivos.
In England, a famous consumer rights NGO classes Samsung amongst the least ethical mobile phone brands in the world, behind its main rivals. They give it just 4 out of 20. In France, 2 associations are filing cases against Samsung. They chastise the brand for misleading consumers by promoting ethical commitments that they don't honour. We have printed off all the reports and claims. There are so many that we have to put them in a suitcase. Then we headed to Barcelona. We have been trying to get in touch with Samsung's managers for weeks without any success. But this time, we know where to find them. According to Christopher Columbus, it's just there, to the left. At the Mobile World Congress, the annual Congress of mobile phone manufacturers, with 70,000 visitors and 1,700 exhibitors. This year, the most eagerly awaited actor on the red carpet is, of course, the seductive Galaxy S5, Samsung's new model. It will be unveiled this evening at a preview showing. The master of ceremonies is Frenchman Jean-Daniel Am, Samsung's vice president of telecoms in Europe.
It's a pleasure to be with you again. Improving human life is at the heart of Samsung. We are so proud of the fact our smartphones positively impact everyday lives. And as Jekishin mentioned, continuing to be the choice for our customers is our #1 consideration. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure.
When the conference ends, we pop our heads backstage straight away. Apologies for the loud music, but it's now or never.
Ah, bonjour monsieur M, je voulais vous parler. Élise Lucet, France Télévisions. Bonjour, je voulais vous parler. Non. Élise Lucier, parce que j'ai regardé tout le show, là, c'était très intéressant. Merci. Je voulais vous remettre ces documents-là. Non, merci. C'est China Labor Watch.
Merci. Pas d'interview.
Non, non, mais c'est la manière dont sont fabriqués vos téléphones avec du travail d'enfant.
Désolé.
Avec des gens qui travaillent 18 heures par jour.
Non, merci.
Avec des gens qui n'ont que $3 de salaire.
On va laisser, je vous entends pas bien, on va laisser terminer le show.
Oui, mais parce qu'en fait, c'est très difficile d'avoir accès à vous, donc je voulais vraiment vous poser des questions.
On a un service de presse qui pourra très bien vous répondre.
On les a sollicités, mais c'est très difficile. Et comme vous parlez français, je voulais vous poser des questions.
Je suis sûr qu'ils reviendront
Ça
vers
vous
vous.
pose problème, j'imagine, que des téléphones Samsung soient
désolé.
fabriqués par des enfants.
Pas d'interview.
Ça vous pose un problème, j'imagine. Non, mais 864.
On n'a pas prévu d'interview sur aucun
pages.
autre sujet que
Il y a des...
les téléphones ce soir. Florence
864 pages, il y a des rapports, il y a des plaintes aussi qui sont vues, bien sûr. Bien sûr, oui, mais c'est vous qui m'intéressez. Là,
j'en suis ravi, mais
il y a 864 pages de rapports, des plaintes qui sont déposées en Chine, qui sont déposées au Brésil. Ouais, vous n'attendez pas à ce genre de questions, en fait.
Merci.
Jamais. Ni aujourd'hui, ni demain, ni jamais, j'imagine. Merci, madame. Merci. Merci, en tout cas.
Merci.
Following this interview, Samsung sent us this pleasant 6-page long letter, which said, Samsung Electronics strives to offer a working environment that meets the highest standards in the industry. Out of more than 90,000 workers, not a single worker under the legal age has been identified. Despite this clean score sheet, Samsung still announces 15 or so new measures in order to combat child labour, such as Samsung suppliers must ensure that the ID photo matches the employee. They must use face recognition software, and in any case of doubt, they need to consult with the relevant authorities. We're in the same position as you. Looking at our mobiles, we never imagined that they would contain so many secrets. And it's not over yet. One of the parts in our cherished mobiles is also one of the biggest causes of pollution in the world. It's the domino effect. At the end of the chain, an entire town is sacrificed to manufacture our phones. It is this photo from an Australian journalist that sent us in the right direction. To find out more, let's open our phone's cover one last time. Amongst the essential parts that make our smartphones work, magnets. They are in the vibrate facility, in the microphone, in the speakerphone, and even in the camera. A dozen in total in every mobile phone. These magnets are made with neodymium, the most magnetic chemical element in the world. The largest neodymium mine can be found in the region of Boudot, in northern China, at the border with Mongolia. Our mobile phone's magnets are born here, in these neodymium mountains, which accounts for 97% of the world's production. But this El Dorado has a price. And that price is pollution. Acid baths, heavy metals, caustic soda. For each ton of neodymium produced, 1 ton of waste and 75,000 litres of acid water are discharged. And the factory spits out everything here into this huge lake waste dump. 600,000 tons of waste are poured out every year. The lake stretches over 11 square kilometres, an area equivalent to Saint-Tropez, but with less sun and more radioactivity. According to this internal document from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the area is highly radioactive, thanks to the chemical waste. The company responsible for this pollution is Baogang, the owner of the neodymium factories. Those in charge of the company refuse all our interview requests. We enter this red area, the contaminated zone. At first sight, the village seems to be abandoned, but there are figures who wander through these empty pathways, such as this lady. Yu Julian, who is 60 years old.
Il y avait combien de personnes ici avant? Et les gens sont partis à cause de la pollution aussi?
To help us better understand the situation, Yu Julian is going to take us to meet one of her last remaining neighbours.
婆婆，2个孩儿。哦。这就咱们的水，他说小孩早上晚回来不给你倒开水喝，就舀起来冷水，一喝就肚难受，拉肚子，主要情况就是这么。哎呀，我这边倒是也不管，他们我也带也不出来，就天天他们在那说的，我也是。我这块儿是我今天平试试了，这事就在关键。
Zhu Zuying would love to leave, but she can't afford to. While she waits, she has no choice but to drink the tap water. One of the villagers points out a well to us, where we can gain access to the water table. The problem is that the well is 300 meters away from the waste dump lake of the Baogang. There is a camera on every post. In total, nearly 100 survey the area. There is even a watchtower. We need to go quickly. This zone is out of bounds.
C'est où? Vas-y, Martin.
A flask attached to a ball of wool. It's a little bit MacGyver in fashion, but it's all that we could find at the time. After a few minutes, we bring up some of the well's water.
Parfait. Allez, on se barre.
For now, there are no arrests. We send the water to our team in Paris, who send it to an independent French laboratory for analysis. A few days later, the results are beyond any doubt. This is no longer drinking water, but a deadly cocktail.
Si on regarde les métaux lourds, on a beaucoup d'arsenic, beaucoup trop d'arsenic, on a beaucoup de lithium, on a beaucoup de manganèse, on a une énorme quantité de strontium. Les chlorures, le sodium, c'est 5-6 fois au-dessus de la norme. L'uranium est au-dessus également. Les sulfates sont à près de 3000 mg par litre, donc 10 fois plus élevés que la réglementation européenne. C'est une eau qui est pas consommable, hein, c'est clair, ni pour la boisson, ni pour la cuisine, ni pour l'irrigation.
Et quelles sont les conséquences sur la santé quand on boit cette eau tous les jours?
Des problèmes qui peuvent aller jusqu'à des problèmes de cancer, des cancers de la peau, et puis on pourrait trouver aussi à terme des cancers de l'intestin ou de la vessie.
In Boudot's hospital, we're going to find out more about the victims of this polluted water. No doctor is authorized to speak to us, and we film with a hidden camera. A team of carers agree to meet us under condition of anonymity. They call Boudot the Cancer City.
其他的肿瘤呢，就是过去呢是胃癌发病率高一些，现在呢结直肠癌发病率。
Et pourquoi le cancer du côlon augmente?
我印象中他那个好像不是说的是肺癌，好像，它是一个消化道肿瘤，好像是。消化道肿瘤。好像是一个消化道吧，我印象中。
They want to show us their cancer ward.
它是一个结肠哦，像北京一个楼的一个方面哦，在咱们自己说，就是可以看他压一下床，他出去了，别人这可以，98%都是肿瘤。到医院我们是已经要确诊的，没准备给他确诊的，所以在医院当中呢，我们。 就是包头地区可能和北京那些上海那些发达地区相比呢，还有一定的差距。
For them, there is no doubt the pollution from Baogang's factories is slowly killing the city of Boudot. There isn't a single epidemiological study that has been carried out, but the doctors themselves have talked of several hundreds of victims. But hear that? No, it's complete radio silence. The authorities don't want the story to get out. Their business with the smartphone brands could suffer as a result. As we leave the hospital, we are stopped by security.
I'm sorry.
We film discreetly. If we want to be able to leave, we have to sign this letter, in which we agree not to carry out any report on Baogang or on its waste dump lake.
If any report is published, we will face responsibilities for it.
To make sure that nothing can be broadcast, the police also confiscate our photos. But to tell the truth, we'd anticipated this. We had enough time to hide the memory card containing the real images and swap it with another card, prepared especially for the occasion. This was what the Chinese policemen have seized. We would have liked to have seen their faces when they discovered the images, but we don't have time. We really need to get out of the city. A large proportion of the mobile phone industry works with Baogang, the company responsible for the pollution. Amongst them is Sony, one of whose magnet providers are supplied by Baogang, or LG. The South Korean brand has all but signed a partnership deal with Baogang. Are these two smartphone giants aware of the pollution problems? And what are they doing to resolve it? Both brands refuse to grant us an interview, but as a strange coincidence, in their email response, they both use the same formula. Even if Baogang is not a direct supplier of ours, it's possible that this company's neodymium is present in our devices. We take your allegations very seriously and will carry out an internal investigation to find out more. Despite our reminders, we haven't been able to see any results from these investigations. When the mobile phone companies don't reply, we turn to their representative. Digital Europe, the European lobby for mobile phone manufacturers. Amongst its members are Sony and LG, of course, but also Apple, BlackBerry, Huawei and Nokia. Under Communications' watchful eye, the director receives us in his office.
This company is a supplier of the mobile phone industry. When you see that, what do you think?
I mean, clearly what you're telling me here is news to me. As I say, I'm glad you're passing that on to me. And I think that the industry will want to see China improve its regulatory environment in order that these people don't continue to suffer from such pollution.
Don't you think your members also have a responsibility in this situation?
I think our members do have a responsibility in this situation to ensure that their supply chain follows the laws and regulations. Yes, I do.
I'm a little astonished that none of the companies have been willing to answer us. How would you explain that? We have the proofs that they do work with Baogang, so we know that they know what's going on there, and nobody wants to answer us.
Well, I hope you'll take something from the fact that I'm prepared to engage to some extent on behalf of the industry on that issue.
Okay, you wouldn't drink this water, would you?
Well, I wouldn't drink that water, no.
Yeah, well, they do drink this water for 20 years.
Since this interview, not a single brand has ceased working with Baogang, the company responsible for the pollution.
All right.
And as we finish off our investigation, we know what you are going to ask. So what do we do now? How do we force the mobile phone industry to make changes? We don't have the answer, but what we do have is hope. Do you recall the scandal of working conditions in the trainer factories of the 1990s? children on production lines, pollution, irresponsible multinationals. Does it ring a bell? Faced with consumer mobilization, the main trainer brands had to make big changes and reassess their supply chain. And today, their codes of conduct are amongst the strictest in the world. Of course, it's not perfect, but already it's a lot better. In the smartphone sector, new initiatives have already appeared, such as Fairphone, a Dutch company that offers fair trade phones at the market price. Could this be the start of a growing movement that will demand better production conditions? The question tonight when we put down our smartphones must be, is part of the solution in our hands?